Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I just want to welcome all our overseas guests to Hong Kong, and welcome to this great city of ours. It's a bit rainy today, unfortunately, but the weather will clear, I'm sure, later on, and everyone can have a good time in this evening. We're really excited to deliver this first local conference in Hong Kong. And I really want to thank the local ULI team that actually worked so hard for this, and also the Asia Pacific headquarters staff who really organized this. And we have a sold-out event. I think we have a capacity of 200, but I think we've sold 250 tickets. So you better get your bums on your seats, or else you'll be sitting on the floor. So ULI has a very special place in my heart, as I always had an involvement with the ULI since the very beginning 11 years ago. And I still remember the times when John Fitzgerald, our president, was sitting next to me, practically at the toilet of Hong Kong Land offices when we started this. And look at where we are now, right? We've got solo attendants, look at the people in this room, and all the companies that are represented. And we really have made a huge impact on a lot of Asia cities, and Hong Kong specific. ULI is very unique, and I think Tiffany has said that we bring together the great leaders to share best practices in the discipline of our real estate industry. With the growth of Asia, ULI entered the market at the time perfectly, and we have shown tremendous growth and influenced policy and strategy in many of the Asia cities and also Hong Kong. And I think we'll get into that in a few later today, but we have actually influenced policy making in some of these key cities, which is quite unique in terms of a entity of our stature. I was born overseas, but I've made Hong Kong my home for now plus 30 years. I came back when Hong Kong 30 years ago and thought I would be here for 2 to 3 years. And 29, 30 years later, I'm standing in front of you, still living here. And I think why we stay in Hong Kong is just a unique place. And I think we all travel quite a bit. And I think no one could deny that every time you come back to Hong Kong and land in Hong Kong airport, you say, thank God I'm back home, which is a very unique place in this world. I really like to thank a few people. Obviously, the sponsors who helped us deliver this inaugural ULI event in Hong Kong. My Hong Kong Executive Committee members, and the Hong Kong-based trustees who volunteered their time, which, as you can imagine, the amount of time and effort spent on this, and really carry out what we plan to do in this mission in our responsible use of land. We're also proud of the recent achievements here in Hong Kong, which we'll touch upon later today also, which include the launch of our high school land use program called Urban Plan, and I'm going to bring up my good friend Phil Kim later on to really give you a good explanation of what we've done. We really have driven educational processes through our system, and which is really powerful. The Award of Excellence, and as well as the inaugural ULI Asia Pacific Leadership Convivium in Shenzhen yesterday, which we went through Shenzhen, and at the same time, we started to integrate and talk about the Greater Bay Area, which I think we all know is such a unique opportunity in this part of the world. We focused on really 4 key pillars in that event, which was the infrastructure, technology, real estate, and the people. And I think it's a very unique event. I think we're going to probably do this every year. I think the team's now probably going to fall over after they hear this, but it's really quite powerful. And I think the opportunity for real estate and as real estate practitioner is really in that area. On that note, I also want to give special thanks to Nick Brook, who is our Asia PAC chairman. Without his support, none of this would get done. And also, obviously, our global chairman, Mr. Toomey, who flew in all the way from the Americas to be with us today. So I would like to bring Tom up, actually, and perhaps give us a few words.
Well, good morning, and for all of you, to be clear, I kind of like this weather and the fact that it's minus 20 Celsius at home. So feels good to me. Welcome. What's important, I guess, a couple things I have to talk about. First, a thanks to Nick and Raymond and John and the entire staff. It takes a great deal of work to put one of these together, and you're going to have a great day because of their efforts, and I'm grateful. The second, just on a personal note, I don't know if many of you realize, but Nick is unique in all of ULI. And when we think about it, in our 80-year history, there have only been 15 lifetime trustees. And Nick is one of those. And it's just an honor always to see you, Nick, and realize all you've accomplished and all you've done for ULI. So I'm personally grateful, but in an 80-year history, to be one of 15 is something special. There's 3 points I want to make today, and I always start out every conversation, every meeting, with a reminder about ULI's mission. And while it was written 80 years ago, I can't think of a statement that is still timeless and more relevant than ever in today's world, and for you professionally, and for a great city and region. But to remind you, we're here at ULI to provide leadership in land use to create sustaining, thriving communities worldwide. Still very relevant when you think about those words. The second is to remind you ULI's uniqueness. Not that it's just a global organization operating in 80 countries and as of January surpassed 43,000 members worldwide. It's not those numbers. What's unique about ULI, mentioned earlier, was the interdisciplinary nature of our organization, that we are conveners of people from all disciplines of real estate. And that is a great deal different than any other trade organization, any organization that lobbies and tries to change things. We actually make our change happen through our members' actions. Our impact is through our members' actions. That makes ULI unique. The other thing that always reminds me about the uniqueness of ULI is the fact that it is a lifetime membership orientation, that you can be in the room and be 20 years old and seeking a network opportunity, 30s on how to do a deal, in your 40s, how to improve upon your track record, in your 50s, mentoring, and then beyond, and I won't count beyond that, just how to give back, how to have greater impact. So it's not tied to your employment, but it's actually tied to your career, your entire life journey. And there are not many organizations that you could be a member of that actually can take you through your entire life as a member, and each stage find a place, a way to contribute, to learn, to give back. And so lastly, I always want to give you kind of a status of the organization and how we're doing. I would say this, our convening, our networking, events like this across the globe are setting records. Year after year, we're finding more and more people to come to these types of events, to contribute, to take away, and the ratings coming out of those continue to grow. So the convening aspect of our business, the idea exchange aspect of ULI is thriving and continuing to grow, which might tell you how relevant the mission is across the globe. The second, the strategic plan, which was rolled out about a year ago, is well underway. It required and called for, because our members wrote it, investments in infrastructure, in technology, and certainly in content. And I think you're seeing that here today in the venue and in all aspects of the Asia Pacific. And speaking of Asia Pacific, we're having a great year. Thank you, Nick, John, for all your efforts. Look forward to continuing the growth and the success. And then again, I have one last request, and I think it's always important for ULI. Help our community grow. Help us identify those who should be in this room, who can benefit from what you've learned today, or the experience, or the network. But if our community of members grow, our impact will grow, your opportunities will grow. So as self-fulfilling, if you will, help us. Thank you tonight. And I'm turning it over to Nick? No. Back to you, Raymond.
Well, thanks, Tom, and again, thank you for coming into to this conference, because I think it's without your support, I don't think we would be where we are now. Now, I'd like to introduce you to ULI Trustee, one of our Hong Kong Executive Committee members, and really a good friend of mine, who's spent a lot of his time and effort to really bring this a new concept that we have in place, the urban plan, which I think he's going to give us an explanation on in the next 10 or 15 minutes. He is Phil Kim, who's the Managing Director of Jerde Partnership. So, Phil, would you like to come up and give us a good introduction?
What I learned from 10th graders and ultimately about the future of Hong Kong. And the backdrop to this is really, we've now spent a year investing time into urban plan, which was built on the foundations of the program in the US and the UK. And it's a very simple issue about taking the mission of all of us as ULI members and teaching a multidisciplinary way of thinking. For us in Hong Kong, we're really targeting high school students, and particularly at the 10th grade level. So before I really start, I would really like Martina and Connie to stand up, because part of the mission here is that there's a core group of people after the event and during the breaks. I would love it if you would approach several of us and ask more about this, because our mission is to get all of you to volunteer for the program. Okay? So these are really related to all of the lessons that actually we learned through this course. So at the ISF Academy, which is one of the high schools here, we've taken about 70 students each time. It's a day-long workshop of looking at how to think about our communities, and everyone takes a role as finance director, director of planning, head of social community engagement issues. And with that, they set up teams, they create their own kind of logo and a mission statement, and actually at the end of it, they have to stay with the mission statement. So this was my favorite, and for the backdrop of Hong Kong, Honky Kong, our city is better than yours, deal with it. Okay, so I love the declarative statement and the confidence that they have about Hong Kong itself. We ran it over a couple of days. I think one of the fantastic things about the program itself is not just that they get to take all the rigor of individual academic courses and put it into a process of thinking about communities and building communities, but the engagement from senior ULI members who volunteer their time to mentor, to help guide the thinking process. It's quite a Socratic process, so we would love to tell them what to do, but actually the whole point is to question and draw out all of their wonderful ideas. It's really related to those kind of discussions. A lot of ideas about Hong Kong from the 10th graders came through, and that's really what I want to talk about, and then I'll wrap that. This is actually where we are, Kwun. So the old central police station and the context of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an incredibly sustainable city in one sense, the compact density that allows us to share everything in mass transit, but it also has issues and challenges. If you think about the network of Hong Kong, how we actually get around, we had the pleasure of taking Tom Murphy around on Sunday for a very casual walk, and this is why we were so exhausted by the end of it. It is truly a neural network of a city, incredibly dynamic. What's really, truly wonderful about Hong Kong is the vitality of the streets, and that part can really never be taken away, even as we focus on modern architecture and some of the drawbacks that a city of this expense and the differences that the haves and the have-nots actually have. It's one of the struggles that we have, which the students actually solved by pointing out many other issues about verticality. When we took the program to beta test in the UK, the first thing that the kids did, the Hong Kong kids did, was they started to stack everything. So the principle of verticality is something that intuitively they all understand. And I think it's quite wonderful that they're taking all the cues from the context around them. And the fact that it's actually a programmable city. One of the things about the future of design, really, and planning is that rather than thinking of everything as top-down and form-driven, the kids already actually understood that everything could be scripted in a way. So it's really about the connections that you and I have, what they have with their peers and friends. And so the idea of creating a user experience diagram, although it isn't part of the program yet, was one of the discussions that actually came through. The issue of happiness kind of came through in the discussion. I have a very short quote from Jeremy Bentham, who was a 19th century English philosopher and economist, who developed the principle of utility. And his quote essentially was, "Happiness is the sum of pleasure minus pain." And I think that really it captures what we struggle with in Hong Kong. We have so much here, yet at the same time, incredible stresses that actually affect people who are young, who are thinking about the future of the city, and how to become sustainable contributing members. This diagram actually shows, it's kind of a strange diagram because it's sort of twisted. Down here is Hong Kong. Up there is Finland. Finland is one of the happiest places on earth. Hong Kong actually is one of the least happy places on earth. And economically, we're one of the richest cities, yet it's not actually generating happiness. And so again, if you think about the future of the young folks here are actually coming through, it's a real issue and struggle about what their role in life will be, and the living conditions that we have here as a city. China's kind of in the middle, and as a place that's actually accelerating to such a degree, you can understand why they are both happy and sad. So it's a perfect description of Mr. Bentham's principle. This is the aspirations of the mainland Chinese who so impact our cities. Seeking pleasure, seeking happiness. That's really the backdrop of why we have such a vibrant city, why we're so economically strong, but why there's such a scarcity in terms of land and places to live comfortably and green space. This is Finland's version. This is beer floating. So most of you who know me, if you say beer, I'm happy. So obviously I'm half Finnish. But it's really their version. And two ends of the scale, an emerging country and a highly developed country, both seeking the pleasures of a city. The street life in Hong Kong, again, is really what we need to focus on, the vitality, instead of the buildings. So the space in between is a term that person who originally hired me, John Jerde, used to say, Jan Gell, who I had the fortune of meeting. I think that those are really what we want to instruct the students, but what they got intuitively. They weren't designing buildings. All the questions and the search was about how do we build better communities for people. And even in some of the densest parts of Hong Kong, again, it's not the buildings, but the market streets in between, the arteries that actually provide the vitality and the experience that we want every day. We're all part of the I generation. I don't really think of millennials or Gen X, Gen Y. I think essentially we're all the same. We're completely addicted and connected via smartphones and digital technology, which is all tracked through every city in Europe, in Southern California, Hong Kong. We're tracked and measurable, but we have to figure out ways of actually capturing that. There are intuitive ways of exploring, and again, that came through in the discussions with the students. Everyone knows Moore's law, and again, everyone does, right? Every 2 years, microprocessors double the capacity and reduce price by 50%. And essentially, it's an exponential, super exponential growth that allows this total immersive life to develop. And we can get lost in it. But again, the lessons from the students is that while they also participate in this world, it's really about the real tangible things that we can touch, that are visceral, that actually matter the most. So related to Hong Kong, we gave them a neighborhood in Hong Kong to think about with the waterfront. And the discussions came about public amenities and public realm. So everyone knows Central Park, not just as a place of pleasure, but actually in terms of development that it's added, I think the last time I read it was like $6 to $8 billion worth of economic value, and I think the tax revenues have been in the billions as well. And if we think about a newer version of that, which is the High Line, I think a lot of us have actually seen it. It's about half the length and a sliver of it that's already generated nearly $1 billion worth of tax revenues, and they're looking at $3 to $4 billion of economic development. One of the lessons for that, though, again, this came through in urban plan discussions, is that while it's become wildly popular, there's also a bit of a mixed message. Some of the authenticity of the local neighborhoods has been lost. And so when we look at images of Hong Kong, I think it isn't just the beautiful buildings that Hong Kong Land will put together, but it's really how to marry it together with existing neighborhoods. A transport-oriented development can also be a garden. We're also dealing with these issues where a planted rooftop can actually reduce the ambient temperatures by 35%, allowing for comfort, being outdoors more, where we're in such a hermetically sealed environment in Hong Kong. So despite the weather and the humidity, we can actually create much more vibrant environments. And the whole principle about being people-oriented, not building-oriented, but the way that people can experience small alleyways and come to public space. This is in Algeria, but again, I think this is something that we need to really focus on, retain, whether it's an old project or a new project. And with this and a 500-year-old Chinese village, they've given us lessons also on our future, which is about prefabrication and being able to really focus on the quality that we can deliver in a much more adaptive world, so that buildings are not necessarily fixed in time, but that they can have utility and constantly change and adapt as our needs change. And that each of us as individuals are actually coders and programmers. So this is an aerial scene of a beach. I've actually forgotten where it is, but every portion of it is sectioned off for semi-privacy, and every individual has actually designed their own kind of experience. And again, I think this is the future of design and planning. And despite the rules that we gave the kids, first thing they did was want to break all the rules. And I think as part of the education system here, which is so demanding and rigid and rigorous, we need them to break the rules, or at least challenge them or challenge us to constantly think and rethink how our communities can be improved. Hong Kong and the I generation, where people are gravitating towards are not the newest buildings. A simple graffiti wall in Soho, actually this is in Korea, but it's really the idea of young people taking over and taking a position on food and temporary uses. Things are real and authentic and adaptive and organic. A co-work space which is actually anchored by a grocery store. That's the entry to a grocery store, which actually really takes the people and their interests and connections to food and produce. And that's a co-work space. And this one's in Munich. This is something that Hong Kong is starting to do as well. This is the Olympia perspective venue where famous European artists have put up installations. And people actually go in and take photographs, put them on Instagram, and we get to also have adaptive use of existing buildings. And Instagram Pier. How many have you been to Instagram Pier? Oh, that's better than I expected. This is in Kennedy Town, and one of the most spectacular spots in Hong Kong. It's very rare in Hong Kong that although we're a harbor city, we get so close to the waterfront. This is essentially a container park where everyone actually gathers to take photographs and participate. It's a raw, real city space. versus something which is highly planned. I'm sure eventually West Kowloon will work, but this is often the experience that people have trying to get to the waterfront. It should be far easier than it is when really, I mean, we are all about the harbor. And really want to kind of conclude by talking about this 5-year-old child who came up at the conclusion of the program. He came up with his little Lego car, said, "What's this?" And started redesigning the blocks that he saw. So our students who are already quite creative was being outdone by this 5-year-old. So I think clearly our mission is very, very straightforward and very simple. One, get out of the way. To really encourage exploration and creativity. And really, we need to be taught by people who have very pure interests, pure observations, where a 5-year-old can actually also continue to teach us. So we really want to explore that further with all of you. I hope that you get a chance to participate in Urban Plan. I've been with ULI for 10, 12 years. Very actively. I got roped into it by John Fitzgerald and Ray. And it's really become part of my mission. And I think all of us, as we have come to accomplish so much, really require a mission. And the fact that you're here today says that. My mission happens to be to encourage the youngest people in our communities to think creatively. And I think they will have all the solutions for the future. And I'm going to listen to them very, very carefully. And I hope you do as well.